Comic Book Savant, episode 427. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode, we're going to be doing a countdown episode. And since we're coming off the huge event, which was Avengers End Game, and it is the conclusion of the Infinity Saga, what they're calling it, the culmination of the 22 movies, which will essentially be 23 movies because they did say Phase 3 doesn't officially end until Spider-Man Far From Home. But as far as the main in continuity Marvel movies, and it's more like what Far From Home is going to be, is more like an epilogue to the events of the Infinity Saga. So I figured I would go back through, since we finally have Endgame out. I've had a chance to see it. You've already should have heard the review. If you've seen the movie, you've probably already listened to my spoiler review. So I thought it would be cool to kind of go back and rank them and see what my rankings are with the inclusion of newer movies like Captain Marvel as well as Endgame. So before we get into that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my brother in arms, which is Heath Holland. We do the Spinner Rack Bros together. He has a website, serialatmidnight.com. He also has his YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/serialatmidnight. We collab for Spinner Rack Bros, and we also do videos over on his channel. If you haven't already checked out his content, please take a moment to do so. Again, either at serialatmidnight.com or over on youtube.com/serialatmidnight. He does, he covers physical media primarily. He does some comic book related content, collecting of multiple media, as far as physical media, be it video games, be it music, DVDs, VHSs. He's really all about preserving the aspect of physical media and owning your own media. And we've done videos talking about that as well, if you check out over on his channel. So I wanted to give him a shout out. Again, we've been friends for almost as long as I've been doing a podcast. He was a fan of the podcast, and reaching out and talking, we became good friends and collaborators together. And we've known each other for over a decade now. So definitely awesome guy. Again, he's like family to me. So definitely, if you haven't checked out his content outside of what we do together on Spinner Rack Bros, I recommend you check out his content over at his website and over at his YouTube channel. And I will put links down in the posting for this on the website. I'll have links to his content. Or if you also go to the links page on comicbooksavant.com, I have all the links to both his YouTube channel as well as his website there as well. With all that being said, let's get into the meat, which is ranking or counting down the 22 Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. For me, and this has not changed in quite a while, I still feel like the worst movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is still Thor: The Dark World. After seeing Endgame, it's some really cool callbacks to Thor: The Dark World, but just overall, I feel like it's not a horrible movie, and it's aspects of the movie I always really enjoy. I like the character development that Loki goes through in that movie. So it's parts, but the villain and just the overall cohesion of the story just lacked for me. It was kind of a jumbled mess. But it's a solid movie. But again, these movies, the quality of the MCU movies has been, bar none, some of the best we've seen in film history at this point. They're consistently, so when it gets to some of these movies, the choice between what ranks over another one is like a hair, because you're comparing great to great, or great to good. So it gets kind of tough ranking these just based on that reason. But still, for me, Thor: The Dark World is the worst MCU movie. And I speak on this too because leading up to End Game, I did a watch-a-thon, so I literally just recently rewatched all these movies. The only movie I didn't revisit in my watch-a-thon was Captain Marvel because it was recently released about a month or two ago, and it's getting ready to come out on home video, so I wasn't going back out to the movies to see that. I own all the other movies, so it was really easy for me to go through and watch those. So all of them literally within the 3 or so weeks leading into Endgame, I had just these. So these movies are super fresh in my mind, and I was ranking them as I was going through just for this particular reason. But again, Thor: Dark World is the worst. Next for me is Iron Man 2. I like Iron Man 2. And I think it was the biggest fault in this movie. And it gets really rough in this section of ranking the movies because they're so close. I feel like, I'm not going to say Thor's bad. Thor: The Dark World is decent. I feel like when you start getting to this next grouping of movies, that's decent. These are good. I think the biggest issue with Iron Man 2 was that it was saddled with the same issue Avengers Age of Ultron was. It was used to set up so much stuff, and it wasn't, because of it, it wasn't as much as a straight-on sequel to Iron Man that it needed to be because it had the weight of setting up so much stuff, like leading into Avengers and the other events that were coming up. So it was kind of saddled with a lot, and it kind of weighed the movie down. But it's really a good movie, and that's when we're introduced to Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow character, which is really one of the most significant storylines to me going back looking at the movie, was her in that movie. And I really liked her, in that movie, kind of establishing her character in that film. Next up for me would be Iron Man 3. I had my issues, and if you guys remember when it originally released and when I reviewed it, I had my caveats and issues with Iron Man 3. But after going back and watching it again, the issues I had have lessened because they did All Hail the King, Marvel short, kind of correcting the whole Mandarin issue, because Mandarin is one of my favorite Iron Man villains of all time. And I really like the things that they did with the Mandarin, like during Matt Fraction's run, where they really made him menacing. And I wanted to see him on screen, him proper on screen, and we didn't get that. And that was a big disappointment because I guess I'm one of the few people that like the Mandarin or knew his back history. But I've always been a huge Iron Man fan. Like, as far as reading the books, even though they were never powerhouse books, or even again, we all established that Iron Man was like a C level, C tier hero before these movies came out. But I always dug Iron Man. I always thought it was a cool concept, and I always would read the book. And, Mandarin, you couldn't have, a run, just like Fantastic Four, you can't have, a run of Fantastic Four where Doctor Doom does not eventually show up. And it's the same thing with Iron Man. No matter how many times they restarted the book with a new creative team, Mandarin was always going to show up. So it was one of those characters that I just always kind of dug. And you saw a lot of different takes on that character over the years, too. So I always really dug that. So the movie worked more because those biases or those issues that were bigger for me have lessened now, seeing the Marvel Universe expand and grow through the movies since then. At the time, it was a big issue. It became less of an issue because Mandarin was never built up to be a power player in the MCU as of yet, and it remains to be seen. Maybe he will sometime in the future because they set it up that the real Mandarin is out there. So we have that to hope for maybe sometime down the road. Next up is Thor. Thor is Thor. Thor is good. Thor is solid. I think Thor is a solid movie. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about Thor. I think it was good. I think it was a well put together movie. It's a good. It's a great origin story. I feel for Thor, and you set up a lot with Loki because you're introduced to Thor and Loki, which both of their journeys from the start here and travel through so many different movies with the not just the Thor movies, if I can talk, the 3 Thor movies, but then we have Loki. He shows up in the first Avengers. He's the major villain in the first Avengers movie. So we get Loki. Journey starts here as well, and he is such an integral part in the MCU, even leading up to Infinity War. So I feel like this was a good origin story for those 2 characters. I feel like it's a good movie. I enjoy it, and It's solid. It's not like my favorite. It might be. I would say it's probably the weakest of the origin stories for like the main 6 Avengers that got origin movies, but Black Widow kind of piggybacked off of Iron Man and Iron Man 2, but the other characters that got their own solo movies. And Hawkeye didn't get a solo movie. We meet Hawkeye actually for the first time in Thor as well, which I totally forgot that he was actually introduced in Thor. I almost forgot that. But for the main, 4 that got their, origin movies, I feel like it might be the weakest just by a hair, because the next one on my list is The Incredible Hulk. I slightly feel like the scale of the movie is a little bit higher. I feel like it's a slightly better story. I feel like this is the movie that the MCU sweeps under the rug because maybe because of all the drama they had with Norton in the movie. Ed Norton. But I really like the movie. I think I saw this movie. It's one of the few MCU movies I went to see in the theater multiple times. I think I saw this 2 or 3 times in the theater. I really dug it for some reason. I still to this day in rewatching the movie, I always, enjoy. I enjoy most of the movie. The end half of the whole fight sequence is a bit much at this point, but all the other sequences, and I loved. Hold on, I'm trying to make sure also, Ed Norton, and I also love Liv Tyler as Betty Ross, and I wanted to see her be brought back. They brought back William Hurt as Thunderbolt Ross, but they don't bring back his daughter. I thought it would have even been cool because they did so many different callbacks. I thought it would have been cool to see her in the end scene of End Game at Tony's funeral. I would have thought that might have been cool. She would have been standing beside her father, but she wasn't there, and I thought that kind of sucked because they even brought back Natalie Portman, which for the longest time, she was like, oh, I'm not, we thought we wouldn't see her, and she did come back to do the cameo from the whole when they went back to Thor: The Dark World for that scene, which I thought was really cool. I would have liked to see Betty Ross back in that movie, and I really thought her and Kid Norton had a really good chemistry as a romantic couple that we just never got to see because everything went left with him after that movie was shot, and then of course he was replaced with Mark Ruffalo, which I thoroughly enjoyed in the role. But I dig Ed Norton. When I go back and watch that movie, I always wonder what if, but it was so much. Well, we'll never know the real truth about what happened between Ed Norton and Marvel in the production of the film. It was a lot of stuff being thrown back around, which he was super uncooperative and he wanted more control of the movie and the story, and it just went left. So I guess we'll never know. But I enjoy that movie. I feel like it's the hidden gem to me out of all the MCU movies is that Incredible Hulk movie. But that's just my personal opinion on that. Next for me would be Ant-Man and the Wasp. The issues that I had in my review, again, it's one of those things, and time has passed, and how Scott Lang ends up being such an integral part of End Game, kind of validated or took away some of the issues I had from how they handled his character in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And they kind of did a good job rebuilding or reestablishing kind of the missteps I felt like they did with his character arc in Ant-Man and Wasp. But this is a fun movie. I like the introduction of Ghost in the film. I like seeing where Wasp has how she's progressed in the time frame between the Ant-Man and the Wasp. I wish they give Angelina Lilly a little bit more to do because she trained like a beast for that movie, and she was like in such good shape. And we don't get to see her enough, and we get to see her a little bit in Endgame. I hope they do more with her character. I hope they do more with both of these characters in the future. This is not their best performing franchise, and I just hope they can really, if they do a third movie, which remains to be seen, if they're going to do a third movie or not in the franchise, I hope they kind of raise the stakes and up the ante a little bit and give them both more meat on the bone and let them really like go all out with the two characters and really establish what their relationship was. We were left off at the end of Ant-Man, seeing that that they might be on the fringe of having a personal relationship. Then we learned from Ant-Man and the Wasp in the little sequence that he kind of up and made a decision, and he didn't talk to her first, and he put them at risk. Which was really messed up, and he spent a lot of the time in Ant-Man and the Wasp trying to redeem himself for the mistakes he made from that. Which I understand that more. I guess I glanced over that aspect of it, but I was like, yeah, he really didn't say anything to Hank or her, took the suit, went overseas, got arrested, and it put all their lives at risk because of the choice he made, and he didn't even make it. He didn't even think enough to consult the woman he was dating, involved with, whatever you want to call it, and the guy that helped him become Ant-Man. So that was kind of messed up. And I think I glanced over that part because I felt like they kind of dumbed down his character to boost up the other two. But I was like, when I really went back, I focused in on that, and I was like, I could see, well, that's foul. Like, what he did was messed up. So I had a different take on the movie seeing it again. And so like I said, the issues I had lessened in rewatching the movie, thinking about what he actually did to create the tension between the three of them. Next on my list is Captain Marvel. I really liked Captain Marvel. I don't think it was a really good Captain Marvel movie. I really think it was like a lot of things were thrown together and put out there that we might see in the future. We might see aspects of Secret Invasion because now we introduced Skrulls. We had to set up her and her story, her and her storyline, because we knew she was going to be in End Game, and it wasn't the best constructed story as far as the origin story for the character, and we were really left with a sense of we really didn't know who Carol was in relation to her being Captain Marvel. I mean, I feel like in the sparing scenes she's used in Endgame, they did a better job establishing her as Captain Marvel in those few scenes than they did of all of Captain Marvel, if that makes sense. But I think, again, it's a solid movie, solid origin story. Again, but it goes back to something like with Thor, where like parts of it is a jumbled mess, just because how they kind of presented it all. But I enjoy it. I look forward to when the movie comes out. I think I just ordered it through Disney Movie Club. I think it comes out sometime in June or something like that. or end of this month or something like that. I think it comes out end of this month digitally, and then it hits the stores on DVD and Blu-ray like in June sometime. So I'll be having that in the next month or so to go back and be able to, rewatch the movie and, have a better thoughts on the movie. But just from what I remember, those were kind of what the things that kind of stood out to me. Next is Ant-Man. I love the fact that they changed the genre up and that it was a heist movie. And I really do. I like this movie. I even like the bad guy. I like Yellow Jacket. Corey Stoll, he did a good job as Yellow Jacket. It was bad that he was only around for one movie because I thought he could have been an interesting villain to have floating around in the Ant-Man universe. And just establishing that world around Ant-Man, that it wasn't tied into the bigger, like, Avengers type stuff at that point. They established him in his own little corner. He's out in the West Coast. I kind of like that whole vibe that everybody is not kind of clumped up in New York, in or around New York, or everybody's so wrapped up in every story you tell, it has to be tied into the Avengers. Though he did become tied to the Avengers later, he established, he's in a different section, of the world, or of the country, and it's, issues and crimes there. Like, not every 500,000 superheroes all have to be based out of New York. And I like they established that right away with Ant-Man, that, okay, he's on the West Coast. Next for me is Marvel's The Avengers. I think this is my least favorite out of the Avengers movies, to be honest with you. I know the significance of it and all that, but yeah, I think it's my least favorite out of the Avengers movies. Going back and watching it felt like kind of parts of it felt kind of like a slog going through it and watching it again. I've watched it quite a few times. I think I like it, but I don't love it. And that's kind of where I'm at with the Avengers at this point, the first Avengers movie. Great scenes, great sequences, but just overall as a movie, it's not my favorite. But it's the first, so, it is what it is. Next on my list is Captain America, the First Avenger. This is flip-flopped on how much I like this movie and where this is ranked for me. I think this is like a good spot for it right here. I love the story. I feel like some of it, and going back watching it, as far as like, I'm not a big fan of period pieces. I never have been. And, it is what it is. But I like this one. It was done very well, very tastefully. And I enjoy it for what it is. And I could go back, and I love Peggy Atwell, and I love that the chemistry her and Chris Evans has, and I love Stanley Tucci in the movie. There's like so much to love about this movie, but it's a movie you definitely got to be in a particular mood for me to sit back and watch. But if I'm in that mood, it's like nothing better. It's it's like a guilty pleasure for me. But again, I'm a person that I've always liked more modern movies than like flashbacks or period piece movies, or I've gotten better over the years when it comes to movies, because I'm just, as big as a comics fan that I am, I'm a huge movie fan, but I'm not a super historian of movies when it comes to things like that, where like I'll go back and watch silent movies or movies from the 1930s and things like that. It's rare that you'll see me watch something that's I'll go back and watch a movie occasionally from maybe like the 60s or 70s, but that's about as far back as I normally go, unless something just strikes me. It has to distract me a certain way. And then I'll have to watch it. But occasionally, I'm gonna be more, current with the movies that I'm gonna watch. So I gotta be in a particular mood to be able to stomach that. But this movie is just nostalgic to me, and I love so much that was created out of the first Avenger. We got Agent Carter eventually spinning out of us being introduced to Peggy in this movie, just Chris Evans growing into the role of Captain America and seeing like his journey from the scrawny trying to be a part of the war. Like it's such heartfelt story, you know what I mean? So it always, gets me just based on that. Yeah, there's nothing more I can say about that. The movie gives me the feels. It's basically what it is. I love it. And I love Chris Evans' character as him playing Cap. So I never can go wrong with putting this movie on. But like I said, as long as I'm in the right headspace to really like to soak it in, then it's like I'm good. I'm all good. What do we have next on the list? That was what? That was number 13. My number 12 pick is Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is one of those movies that is like, if I could give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, Doctor Strange is like a thumb in the middle. I like a lot about Doctor Strange. It's just I think I'm ready to see more. I like the world that was built in this movie, and I like the Doctor Strange character. I like the Doctor Strange character from the comics, and I like Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, and I just want more. We've had him in Infinity War and End Game, but I'm ready to see more of his world. It has my interest, and I want more. I was like clamoring for more, especially how they set up the end credit scene with Mordor. I want to see that that explored. That they're friends, and now like they're gonna be like enemies, and like see that turn. I want to see that. And I'm like really curious, and we're still going to have a while. We've heard Scott Derrickson is coming back to direct, but I don't think they have writers together yet. So it might be a couple of years before we get a Doctor Strange 2. But I'm real curious to see where it goes. It has me intrigued. I want more. I like him. I like Wong. And like I said, the world that they built in Doctor Strange is like I'm jonesing for more of it. Number 11 for me is Thor Ragnarok. It was good. It was good. It was funny. I'm a huge Walt Simonson fan. They took aspects of the Walt Simonson stuff and they took Planet Hulk and they combined it together and made it something different. I'm mad that they took Hela off the board so soon because I really dug. Was it Kate Beckinsale? I hate when I forget stuff. I'm going to look so I don't say the wrong thing. Kate Blanchett, that's who it is. I really liked her as Hela, and like I'm mad they took her off the board because she was like super cool and super menacing, but she was a little OP though. So he's like, she was really a handful. But I'm curious to see spoilers if you haven't seen Endgame yet. They kind of set up Thor going off with the Guardians of the Galaxy, so I'm assuming maybe before we might get a Thor sequel, we'll get at the Asgardians of the Galaxy maybe with him in the next Guardians movie. But I hope we eventually get another Thor movie after that. Because they have to reestablish the Asgardians, or they're reestablishing the Asgardians from what happened at the end of Endgame with Thor making Valkyrie the queen of Asgard there on Earth. So it'll be interesting to see where all that would go and what new threat they would have set up for the Asgardians in a sequel, a proper sequel. Number 10 for me is Spider-Man Homecoming. Again, I just love this movie. It's like pitch perfect for what it needs to be. You have, they have the right person playing Spider-Man and Peter Parker, establishing the world, the whole doing the take of him being back in high school and them doing it right. I just like the whole vibe. I like the relationship he had with the villain, with Michael Keaton as Falcon, and I said Falcon as Vulture, and the events of the first Avengers movie triggering Michael Keaton's character to go evil because of damage control, and he had got those contracts and he got yanked from under him. I understood his motivation and what was pushing him to make the choices he made, because he had everything on the line and he would have lost everything because of it. So I liked all of that in the movie, and I'm really interested to see what we get coming out of Far From Home as the sequel to this movie. So that's my number 10. Number 9 for me is the Iron Man 1. This movie holds up so well. It's the first of all these movies, and every time I watch it, I'm just shocked on how well this movie stands up over the test of time. It was just a good movie. It's just a well done movie. It's not a perfect movie, but it's just well done, and it holds up over time. I feel like it'll be one of those movies like RoboCop. Like they did a remake of RoboCop, and I thought it was funny. It was, they tried to update the whole concept and the premise. And then I went back when they first announced they were doing it, and I watched the original RoboCop, and I was shocked because the movie came out in the mid '80s. How well it stood up and how ahead of its time it was, and that it was very relevant to time now. And I think it was even more relevant than what the remake was for now. For the time it came out a few years ago, I felt like the original version was the better version, and it was more relatable than them trying to update and have a Steve Jobs, Michael Keaton's in that, and have like a Steve Jobs, they try to put modern tropes in there, and it just didn't work. Just good writing and good performances will just stand the test of time regardless of what you put up against it. So in that aspect, I feel like Iron Man is a classic in that way. Number 8 is Avengers Age of Ultron. I like this movie. I like this as an Avengers movie. Some people don't like it. I like it. We're introduced to Quicksilver, Scarlett the Witch, which is one of my favorite characters. I really dig Scarlett the Witch, the MCU's version of Scarlett the Witch. Or Wanda. We don't really ever call her Scarlett the Witch at any point, I think, in any of the movies. They redeem Hawkeye in this movie. Ultron is a good villain, taken out a little bit too easy. We introduced the Vision. So many things were set up in this film. It had to set up so much stuff. We had to set up the events for Thor Ragnarok. We had to set up events for Infinity War. We had to set up so much. It had so much weight. It had so many things. It had to serve so many masters. And I think going back after all the other movies came out and saw the cool stuff it set up, I just appreciated the movie more, and I always enjoyed it. But I was like, man, you understand it why they took the swerves, because you saw the payoff for the stuff. When the movie come out at the time, we don't know what's coming. But once you saw what's coming and how it ties back into the movie, like, oh, okay, that's why they had to do that. And then I can excuse that and just boil it down to the movie itself and its main story. And it was setting up some stuff for Civil War too. As a matter of fact, that you just appreciate the main story in the movie for what it is, and everything that it pulled off to help set up that we got paid off in later movies. Number 7 and number 6 for me is respectively Guardians of the Galaxy and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 at 7 and 6. I think I like Volume 2 slightly better just because of like the theme of father and son, and my issues with losing my father some years ago. It gives me the kind of feels. So when those themes are kind of presented in a movie, they hit me in a personal way just because I was so close to my father when he passed away, and I still miss him. So that's always when those themes are kind of explored in a movie, and I'll talk about that. It echoes when I talk about Black Panther. Those themes, they resonate with me because I can relate, and I've been through them personally and in a deep and emotional way. So those tend to resonate. So, that's where it is, and where that one edges out the first movie for me. But I love all those characters. Rocket, I think, by far is hands down my favorite character in the MCU. because of these two movies. I just love his character. And that scene in Guardians 2 where he's fighting off the Ravengers in the forest. I can watch that scene over and over again. It is hilarious. Next for me, number 5 is Avengers End Game. Some people say it's the greatest comic book movie ever, greatest MCU movie ever. I thoroughly enjoyed Endgame. I feel like it is a culmination of this whole journey we've been on in the Infinity Saga. I talked about my slight issues I had with the movie. I didn't talk about enough about moments that I loved, and the combination of I love Nebula in this movie and her character arc. I love Chris Evans' journey as Steve Rogers. I love that. I loved seeing him say Avengers Assemble. I think it was the one time I got like goosebumps in the movie and almost kind of broke down because I had been wanting him to say it, and seeing his back up against the wall and his shield broke and him tighten it up and like I'm about to go back in and all the people start showing up through the portals and he says Avengers Assemble. Man, and him handling a Mjolnir. Oh boy, try to tell you, goosebumps. I was like so hyped during that part of the movie. So many things I like about it. It's so much. It's just such an overwhelming movie. So that's why it's kind of number 5 for me. Infinity War edges it out slightly. It's my number 4 movie, and I like the more intimate, focused tone of Infinity War over Endgame. And it was one of the first movies. We get that some with Black Panther, where we really they'd start doing a good job with the villains. I feel like they did it in Homecoming, they did it in Infinity War, they did it in Black Panther, and it was a Thanos movie, I like the slightly darker tinge to the movie. I don't mind dark much. I know some like the happier, brighter, go lucky. I like the character exploration in Thanos. I like seeing the heroes actually in peril and with their backs up against the wall in these two movies. So it edges it out slightly because I just feel like the movie's slightly more a focused movie, and it's not so much going on. It's not as overwhelming. I like the more focused narrative of Infinity War over Endgame, but I still think Endgame, like I said, this is where we're splitting hairs by just a moment. I think with my top 5 movies, any day of the week, depending what my mood could be, these could flop spots at any given point in time. Number 3 movie is Captain America: Civil War. Yeah, I just think the story between Tony, Bucky, and Steve is like the core of this movie, and seeing just how left and how much it fractured. And it pays off so much in the beginning of Endgame when they rescue Tony and he comes back to Earth, and he really like lays it out to Cap. Like how much damage was done. Like this was such an impactful movie. Again, this was more like Avengers 2.5 instead of a Captain America movie. So really good movie. I can like watch it over and over again. Number 2 for me is Black Panther, and I'm not going to re-elaborate the father-son connection things that I just brought up in when talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It is what it is. It's just what I feel in my heart. I resonate with that a ton, and it touches me in a very personal way, in an emotional way. So rewatching that movie, and I purposely, and it was kind of crazy because I cried in the theater, and I talked about this, I think, in my review when I originally saw Black Panther. I only saw it once in the theater, and as soon as it came out on home video, I owned it. And I purposely had not watched that movie again because of that. Because of the relationship between T'Challa and his father was so very similar to how my relationship was with my father. And it bothered me. It just shook me. When I was in the theater, I couldn't stop crying at multiple points whenever they interacted. And I didn't want to feel that. So I personally avoided watching the movie based on that fact for the longest time. But doing this, watch-a-thon, I handled it well. I didn't break down or anything and rewatching the movie. I could appreciate it, but I worried about that so much because it affected me so much to my core, and seeing the movie in the theaters, that it worried me in watching the movie at home to rewatch it, that if I could be able to and keep it together. But surprisingly, it didn't have that same level of effect on me, but it still made me think back to me and my father's relationship throughout the whole time I was watching a movie, which, again, when a movie can affect you on a personal level on that one, it's going to be one of your top movies, because it's not just always a visual connection. Sometimes it's a personal connection that you can have in a movie that will resonate with how it stands for you, as far as how much you like or dislike a movie. Last but not least would be Captain America: The Winter Soldier. If there is anything close to a perfect movie in the MCU, I think this movie's it. I have watched this movie so many times since the movie has been released. I only saw it one time in the theater, but I bought it as soon as it came out on home video, and I've watched this movie so many times. It's ridiculous, and I feel like it's the closest thing Marvel Studios has to a perfect movie. It's just they picked the perfect tone. Political thriller. It just all works, and it just works so well. And how Bucky as the Winter Soldier is just freaking frightening as heck in the movie. It is insane, and I love it. I can't even say anything more than I just love it. I could just watch it over and over and over again, and I have. Like I said, I can't even say. I've probably rewatched this movie somewhere in the area of about 50 times. I think probably since it's been out on home video, which it hasn't been out, but so many years, so it's ridiculous I've seen it that many times. But I have. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I have. So that is my number one movie of ranking the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies for Countdown. That's all I really have for you guys from this episode. Don't forget to check out Heath. I'll have his information down in the links from the posting of this episode. If you haven't, go over to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/comicbooksavant. We've passed 300 subscribers at this point. My mission for the year was to get to 1,000. I'm still holding on hope for that, but I need you guys' support. So if you listen to the podcast and you haven't went over to the YouTube channel, take a moment, stop by YouTube. Let's do a search for Comic Book Savant, or like I said, youtube.com/comicbooksavant. Go click subscribe, hit the little bell notification so you know when the new videos drop. Also, if you've not recently or ever gone over to iTunes, go over to iTunes and look up Comic Book Savant and leave a nice review on the podcast. That always helps a lot. Also, we have merch. We have the Teespring store. I'll have links in the episode for the store, so you guys can check that out. I have mugs. I have a couple of T-shirts, maybe, and I think a hoodie on there as well. And I'll be coming up with new things because we came up with a name for our community. We are called the Savant Society. We were talking about it on the Facebook group, and we came up with that name. It stuck, and I'm going to be having a T-shirt design with that out soon. I'm finishing up the T-shirt design, so that should be up soon on the store as well. So if you want to join the Facebook group, it is Facebook, www.facebook.com. I think /groups, and then it's / the Savant Society. And you can request to join the group, and then as soon as I see your request, I will approve it. We have about 25 or so, 25, 26 odd members, and it's just like we congregate and we talk comics and we get to know each other and we have fun, and I throw out ideas and I collaborate with you guys on things that you might want me to cover in upcoming episodes, and get your feedback on things that I'm trying to position with the show. So it is a good community. We're building it. We're getting more members on there. And like I said, it's just a chance for us to all interact with one another and talk about comics. And like I said, get to know each other and have fun. So definitely, if you have a moment to do that. And last but not least, I'll throw it out there. If you haven't already and you want to see about supporting the show, you can go over to patreon.com/Comic Book Savant and inquire about becoming a patron. Basically, for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show. And I have all types of tiers. I have I think it's 4 tiers or 5 tiers. From $1 is the lowest tier to the highest tier, $7. And you, what you do is you basically, it's like a subscription that you support, that you put into the podcast. You get it's a value added thing. You have different tiers, and you have different rewards for each tier that you get. Things like you get episodes a little bit early for the main podcast. I do the Comic Book Savant extra podcast feed there. You get different discounts. Like I said, it's all kind of different tiers related there as far as the different rewards you get and the different bonuses and benefits for your money. And everything you contribute to the show through the Patreon goes back into the show. So far, due to the Patreon support, I was able to get a new webcam. So I'm going to be doing like live streams for the Patreons. I'm going to be doing live streams on the YouTube channel coming up, because now I have a good webcam. I was able to use some of the money with my wife helping me out, and then upgrade my camcorder. So I got another camcorder that I'm learning now to slightly better quality videos. So it goes right back into the show and helping raise the quality of the product that I release to you guys. And if you can't become a Patreon, I have links on the website where if you want to do like a one-time donation through like PayPal and contribute something, if you don't want to do like a longer term commitment, because with Patreon, it's an ongoing monthly kind of support thing, but you can cancel it at any time. So it's not, you're not like you're locked in for like a year or anything. It's month to month. Like if you have to, you can't, continue to support, I understand. You can cancel at any point in time, or you can, raise or lower the amount, so it's just, again, helps the channel, helps the content. Like I said, I'm trying to grow the platform of Comic Book Savant and the community as big as possible. And I have a lot of things that I want to do. You guys have been helping me do it, helping me spread the word. And it's only been better. Like I said, it's been this past year to 2 years has been, super great, because I was so nervous about doing the YouTube channel. You guys supported me, backed me up. It took a little time to get going because it was a new platform for me to learn, but we've already got to 300 subscribers. I didn't think I was going to get it, this quickly. And just constantly growing the actual community through things like the Facebook group and things like that, and just you guys interacting and messaging me and me getting to know you guys better. It's like that, like all these things are due to you guys and your support, and I really appreciate it. I can't do any of this without you guys, so I appreciate it. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode. Again, I'm your host, James Harris. This is the Comic Book Savant podcast. I will see you guys next week for another episode of Comic Book Savant. Until then, you guys take care and have a good week. I will talk to you soon.